Our final video is going to look at semen collection and evaluation in the ram or the buck. And so there's several different ways to collect a semen sample. And the first is the electroejaculator. We did not use this. We try to use an AV as much as possible. But this does not require any training and can, a lot of the times this is what veterinarians would use in range ram situations, that they're trying to collect samples from 20, 30 rams and in a day, and need to be able to ensure at least a good sample quickly. And so that's the electroejaculator. It's the quickest way. And so what happens is the probe is inserted and stimulates the prostate gland to cause ejaculation. We use the AV, the artificial vagina, and that is our preference, but it does require training, as you guys did see that. It requires teaser females and trying to have some females that are in heat so that you can get a good collection as well. But this will produce the most natural and the highest volume collections and is the best evaluation. The electroejaculator can cause some debris or something else to sometimes come in. It's not as good of an ejaculate, especially if you're going to do artificial insemination or freeze the semen. It's not quite the quality you would get as using the AV. And so we've talked about breeding soundness exams, and so I just want to reiterate that the first part is that physical exam, looking at their eyes, their feet and legs, make sure hooves are trimmed, their mouth is in good shape so they can eat, they can travel. Also, always check temperature and general health and well-being of the male to make sure that they're going to be able to get out into the herd and do what you're asking of them. Body condition, critical. I should go get a picture of Heavy, because after 45 days in the breeding season, he went from being in excellent body condition to probably a body condition 2. He'll rebound, but he was focused on one task, and his job was to breed ewes. And the rams will sometimes forget that they need to eat and maintain their own body condition. They're pretty focused on what they're asked to do. And so 1 to 2 would be considered questionable or underconditioned. If you were to look at Heavy now, he would be in this category. And you remember when we first started, when we did the breeding soundness exams, he was a 3 to a 4, which was satisfactory. And 5 would be questionable because they're too fat. Also want to check the genitalia, like the sheath, in case of pizzle rot. Make sure the testes are in good shape, all of those things. The next step is semen examination, and there's the two things that we look at. Motility is the forward progress, and that's where we were looking for just the swirling in a consistent direction. The second element is the morphology, the percent normal sperm in an ejaculate. And so when we're doing these breeding soundness exams and we're interpreting them, anything that's marked with 1 unsatisfactory is unsatisfactory. That means we're going to cull or treat them and retest them at a later date. Richard was one of those. We're going to retest him now that we're getting into cooler weather. A questionable score may result in being able to breed a limited number of females, but they're going to need something else to happen to move up into that satisfactory category. Satisfactory, a ram or buck marked satisfactory should be able to impregnate about 50 females during a 30 to 40 day breeding season. And so this is where Heavy was at, and he has done that. He's marked probably actually almost closer to 60 ewes. He got used, Heavy got used heavy this year. Haha, that was funny. An exceptional male should be able to impregnate about 100 females during that 30 to 40 day breeding season. And so just to wrap up the discussion of the male reproductive side of things, we need to be aware of causes of infertility in the male. And the first one is epididymitis, caused by the Brucella ovis bacteria. And this is one that I'm hearing is coming back into California that we really need to monitor. It impacts the tail of the epididymis, and it is a venereal disease, so it can be transmitted from ram to ewe or ram to ram. It's a bigger issue on the sheep side. I'm not sure how big of an issue it is on the goat side. And so infected rams do have reduced fertility, and you need to diagnose by palpation, blood test, or semen evaluation. And that's why if you purchase a ram from out of state, they have to have a negative Brucella ovis test to even cross state lines. Although not everybody follows the rules and they do get in. But this is something that if you're going to be a breeder, you need to pay attention to. And the reason why is because this is going to be an underlying fertility issue in your flock or herd if you don't pay attention to it. There is a vaccine available that can be used for Brucella ovis. Pizzle rot is another one, and I mentioned that it's an infection of the sheath area. It's caused by a bacteria, and so it can be treated with antibiotics. But it's definitely something that is more management than anything. And so if they're on high protein diets, that can be a problem because that increases the amount of urea in the urine, which can be acidic. That's why we usually give our rams grain hay, like a 3-way grain hay, whether it's barley, wheat, oat, something like that, because it's not super high in protein. It's got plenty of fiber and plenty of calories for the rams. As treats, we'll give them a little bit of alfalfa, but too much alfalfa in the males can lead to that pizzle rot. So we really try to mitigate that by not feeding alfalfa to the rams. That's the only time I really don't feed alfalfa is to the males. That ammonia production that comes off of that with too much urea in the diet or too much nitrogen in the diet causes ulcerations and a burn. It looks just like canker sores or something like that, but it's on that sheath. And so that wraps up our male reproduction. And so you should be able to, from this section and including the BSE lab, you should be able to identify the parts of the male anatomy and describe what a breeding soundness exam is and how do we interpret those results.